And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Welcome to Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou. Our show today comes to you from the traditional and unceded territory of the Tsimshian people. Beehive burners were conical steel furnaces used to burn wood waste from sawmills and lumber yards. They were a common sight in British Columbia in the early to mid-20th century. Tonight on Open Connection, we open our archives to bring you this story from 2000.
For nearly 30 years, smoke has been billowing out of 3 Beehive burners in the Bulkley Valley. Some say those emissions have contributed to the high incidence of respiratory problems in young and old from Smithers to Houston.
That's one of the reasons that our physicians group got together in the first place in the sort of late 80s, was that a bunch of us had noticed individually that when we first came to the valley, the patterns of respiratory disease were much elevated here in some respects, especially to do with some asthma and respiratory diseases.
Over the years, the forestry companies operating Beehive burners have gotten a pretty bad rap, but some of those companies have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to make the burners burn their wood waste more efficiently.
We have, first of all, have a loader operator on 8 shifts, so it's 24 hours a day, and he's constantly monitoring the burner. He's loading fuel when needed. We also have closed-circuit monitors, closed-circuit TVs that is monitored from within the mill and constantly watched, and if there's any indication of problems, then we dispatch a crew out there immediately.
Beehive burners do add to air pollution. Just how much is an absolute unknown.
All we do know is that over the years, there's more and more studies that are coming available that point to causative relationships between these particular combustion particulate matter in our air and respiratory diseases, and the studies are well recognized now.
Dr. Bastian was one of 4 Bulkley Valley residents who launched an appeal of the permits the 3 mills hold to operate burners till the end of this year. In a very rare move, the Environmental Appeal Board said yes to hearing the case and even came up to Smithers to hold the hearings.
The regional waste manager for the BC Ministry of Environment has issued a permit to 3 companies in the Bulkley Valley to operate Beehive burners. It's my belief that the operation of those burners produces pollution which harms me and other people in the Bulkley Valley. So I have, through my lawyer, asked that that permit be overturned.
2 weeks of hearings, which are very much like a courtroom drama, so cameras are not allowed to film the actual procedure, began February 21st in an un-courtroom-like room in the basement of the Hudson Bay Lodge.
Shut them down! Shut them down! Shut them
Just as the hearings began, a raucous crowd gathered outside the hotel. A local group called Choked, which is against the burners, showed up to voice their displeasure about beehives and to celebrate the fact that the hearings were actually taking place.
There have been lots of beehive burners around the province that have been phased out, and we think it should be phased out here as well. And no other jurisdiction in North America are there beehive burners. They've all been phased out in every other jurisdiction except British Columbia.
Inside, it was literally wall-to-wall lawyers as barristers from the 3 mills, Pacific Inland Resources, Canfor, formerly Northwood, and Houston Forest Products lined up on the right to try to prove to the 3-member appeal board that emissions from beehive burners aren't as copious and harmful as the people's witnesses say they are. On the left side, lawyers for BC Environment and the appellants.
We called a variety of witnesses from the local area and also showed videotape of the type of smoke that's produced by the 3 beehive burners. And what we really wanted to give the board a picture of is what it's like to live here, what the actual air quality conditions are, and what the visual smoke conditions are like.
A total of 18 expert witnesses were called, ranging from Bulkley Valley residents to doctors to a specialist in air quality impact.
The main conclusion is that the report by the other consultant has underestimated the impacts of these burners because they've relied on very low emission rates. Secondly, they've overestimated the significance of these emissions, the emissions of fugitive dust from rural sources relative to the beehive burners. In my opinion, the beehive burners are a far more important source of particulate matter.
As in any good trial, there are at least 2 sides to the story. A professor from Harvard University School of Public Health testified that whatever the amount of particulate matter from burners in the Bulkley Valley air, it would have little or no effect on human lungs. Whether that's true or not, the mills know they have to find alternatives because there will come a day when they have to shut the burners down.
In Quesnel, we built an MDF plant, and in Williams Lake, we're involved in a cogeneration plant, and Currently, right now, we're involved with the two mills in Houston as well as BC Hydro to investigate the possibility of a cogeneration plant to handle the wood waste from the three facilities, and right now that looks pretty positive right now.
Unfortunately, the hearings didn't end in Smithers as planned. One or two more witnesses still have to be called in Vancouver next month, then final arguments and summations in May.
Well, I think that when we go to closing argument on this, I would anticipate that the lawyers for the mills will simply argue that all that visual observation of smoke in the air really doesn't mean anything.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Thank you for staying with us. In June 1990, the members of the BC Legislative Assembly passed the UNBC Act, officially creating UNBC. The dream of having a northern university goes back much further. Let us return to the archives as John Crawford gives us more background on UNBC.
The idea had been around for a number of years to improve the educational opportunities of northern residents, but in the late 1980s, a drive began in earnest to have a university built in northern British Columbia.
I was a member of the Rotary Club of Prince George, and the founding president of the University Society was Murray Sadler, who was a member of that club, and he brought us regular reports. And I was also involved in School District 57 in Prince George, as an assistant superintendent at the time, and as a school district we were very interested in having a university come closer so that more students would have access to university education than at the cost of going to the Lower Mainland.
Erasmus says that elsewhere in BC at the time, colleges in the Okanagan and Vancouver Island were expanding to become degree-granting or university colleges. But Sadler's group decided what the North needed was a full-fledged university.
Statistics showed that from the northern regions, a much lower percentage of students carried on into university because of the cost of having to go to the Lower Mainland.
There was some concern back then that the new Northern University would be basically a Prince George enterprise, benefiting that area but with little impact on the Northwest. But since its inception, UNBC has taken great pains to emphasize its regional nature. In fact, university officials bristle if you call it a Prince George University.
We are a regional university. We started off wanting to be a regional university. We had our struggles. We had to work hard to make sure it was a regional university, but our area in the Northwest is doing very well.
Right now we have around 60 students who are taking courses in Terrace. At the graduate and undergraduate level. That's the largest center we have outside of Prince George. We have students in Rupert and Kitimat and throughout Hazelton and Smithers, so we're having a significant impact on this region.
A problem UNBC has had in our region is the lack of a physical presence. You don't see a campus building or billboards anywhere proclaiming UNBC like you do, say, at Northwest Community College.
Yeah, that's always been frustrating to me because, as I said, Terrace is our major center of operations outside of Prince George. So the other major ones being places like Quesnel and Fort St. John. So Terrace has been a significant center for some years, but there has been no really strong visual presence of the university. With the opening of the university center here in Terrace, that is going to change.
The hope is that people studying here in the North will remain in the region once they have their degrees, and UNBC is hoping to expand the types of courses it offers to answer looming shortages, in education, for example.
Well, right now what we have is graduate programs. We've got a graduate program in counseling and a graduate program in curriculum instruction. What we're looking at developing is a undergraduate program, a Bachelor of Education, so that we would be able to certify teachers as the predicted teacher shortage comes up.
UNBC is also setting up an Institute for Health Research, which it feels will be extremely relevant to the Northwest.
We're very optimistic that we'll receive both federal and provincial funding to establish an institute, and that institute at UNBC will be the lead institute in Canada to conduct research in rural and remote health issues. So we're very, very bullish on developing that area of our research, and it'll have a significant impact on communities throughout the north.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Welcome back to Open Connection. Founded in 2001 to provide students with an understanding of the histories, contemporary realities, and political concerns of Indigenous peoples in Canada and beyond, First Nations and Indigenous Studies is an undergraduate program within the Faculty of Arts at UNBC. Let us return their archives as Anne-Marie Sam shares more about the program.
Since its beginnings, UNBC has tried to offer relevant courses to the region, such as First Nation Studies, where its impact has been significant.
In the Northwest, well, I think just by having the courses available to students here, that especially with WWN in Nuayanch, people don't have to leave home, and that's always a concern or an issue for where I work at the First Nation Center at UNBC. One of the main things students come to us is that they're missing home. And so this way they get to stay home, they get to be supported by their families, and they get to learn also and get their education. So I think it's a win-win situation for all the communities.
UNBC has succeeded in achieving national recognition in Maclean's magazine on many fronts.
The first year it was rated number 9 out of small universities, and the following year it went up to number 8. And for a university that's 8 years old, that's a pretty good achievement.
In a category Maclean's called Leaders of Tomorrow, UNBC was 3rd in the country for small universities. It ranked 6th in terms of the average final year grades of its freshman students coming in from high school. It was 4th in the percentage of full-time professors who had won national awards. And it was ranked 2nd in the nation in research grants for social sciences and humanities. Is all of this having the desired effect? Has UNBC become a viable alternative for Northwest students graduating from high school?
I believe the answer to that is yes. We have all the BC universities come to Caledonia every year, as well as going to Kitimat in Prince Rupert, and they basically promote the university and recruit students. UNBC also does a significant amount of recruiting at Northwest Community College, because there are quite a few students, particularly in Terrace and Prince Rupert, that I'm aware of, who first go to Northwest Community College because that is very, very significantly cheaper because of the accommodation cost. They can live at home. And then they transfer from Northwest Community College to UNBC. So clearly, students know about that as an option.
Actually, finding students who plan to go from Caledonia straight into UNBC proved to be quite a challenge for us. A school guidance counselor couldn't find us any. We did talk to one young man who was offered a UNBC scholarship, but he had to say no thanks.
I wanted to go to a school that had pharmacy, and UNBC doesn't offer pharmacy. The only one in BC that does is UBC. So that was my main reason. And I thought about taking my first year sciences there, and I realized I may have a scholarship for full tuition, but I still have to pay for room and board. Whereas if I go up to the college here, it'd just be tuition, so it'd be a lot cheaper for me.
Would he have considered UNBC if it had offered pharmacy?
Oh, I would have gone there. It's just they didn't have the course I needed. I've heard a lot of good about the school, and I think it's good to have a school up north for all the people here, but like how they have a need for pharmacists up north, I think they should have pharmacy at UNBC. They should try to offer it. You know, even if they offered first and second year or something, and then you had to finish at UBC, it'd be good.
So what lies in UNBC's future? How will the university expand and grow in the coming decade?
My visions are that we really expand into degree offerings so that we offer whole degrees so that students don't have to leave their communities, and that we actually attract students from other communities who can only come here for the degrees that we offer. I also look forward to really seeing the university being an economic development strategy for the region, really helping the region as a transition economy to diversify the economy and to provide education and training to people here in the region.
And mostly, UNBC hopes to reach more Northwest residents who might not otherwise get a chance to go past high school.
This is our mandate, to provide post-secondary education where there has never been any, and really become a force in the community as a result.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Established in 1999 to represent British Columbia's seafood industry, the BC Food Alliance is a nonprofit organization that accounts for approximately 95% of the value of wild seafood from Canada's Pacific coast. In this final segment of Open Connection, let us return to the archives with Charlie Minns.
Limited fishing opportunities has forced North Coast seafood sector groups to search for ways to get a bigger bang for their buck. One of the ways being considered is value chain strategy.
A value chain is simply a linked partnership between the various groups or components that will deliver a final or finished product to the consumer. And what it means is that the very beginning of that link, the middle of the link, and whichever parts of that link have to have access to all of the information and have to be exposed mostly to the end marketplace.
The BC Seafood Sector Council points to other industries like chicken and grain as examples of how value chain strategy has worked.
Assisted a number of companies in moving from being almost going out of business to becoming very, very successful and profitable companies. And the philosophy behind it is what the Sector Council has always been trying to drive, and that is that the workers in the plant and the managers and the fishermen are integral links in fulfilling the marketplace. And to be integral links, you have to be informed, you have to be flexible and proactive, and that seems to be what's happening with value chains.
I think as an industry, we looked at each other and said we have to work together if we're going to survive and ultimately prosper. And with value chains, we treat each other that are in the industry as partners, as valued links in a chain, rather than as adversaries. And the benefits of that are each of us will be able to do better with less unknowns. You have to learn how to trust one another, you have to depend on one another, you have to look out for the other person's best interests. A lot of common sense in action, if you would.
Falkenberg says his association has had success with the philosophy and points to their first value chain experiment with the restaurant chain Swiss Chalet as an example.
Swiss Chalet came to us and I was having lunch with the head guy from Canada, and he said, I'm not getting enough product in the back door of my stores within the weight specifications. My consumers are unhappy because one gets a big chicken, one gets a little chicken. What can we do better? Let's work on it together. So over 8 months, we turned the percentage of product going in the back door of the Swiss Chalet plants from 50% to 80%. And that was a success story in the short run.
At first glance, the idea of value chain seems to agree with some North Coast sector groups.
Well, a chronic problem that we hear both from processors and from fishers is a feeling of a lack of overall control in product. Some fishers expend a lot of energy in ensuring that the product that they bring to the plant is of the highest quality, and then they feel that they really lose track of that product. Once it gets to the plant, it kind of disappears through the double doors, and they never really are sure where it actually ends up, how it's consumed at the consumer end. So fishers who are willing to put forth effort want to have a little more control and want to ensure that the product that they carefully handle when it reaches the consumer fetches a better price than perhaps the average if they're willing to put forth extra effort. So value change is a way for that bottom of the chain producer to actually have those conversations with the marketers and with others.
With the live rock cod, I go out, I know what the consumer wants and what he doesn't want, and I get paid accordingly. If I don't look after the fish, if I don't produce what he wants, it comes right back to me. I get the kick in the face right here.
Value chains aren't totally foreign to the North Coast, and in fact, the Canadian Fishing Company and its employees have already been working on similar models.
We've set up committees within our workforce to look at our existing operations, how they can be better operated, as well as looking at some new operations which we may be able to get into. So the key in many of these things is to empower the employees and to get them involved from all levels of production.
As expressed already, value chains are based on communication and trust, two qualities which haven't exactly existed between certain sector groups on the North Coast and could be a major obstacle in putting the philosophy into practice.
We've got a limited resource. Let's work together on capitalizing so that we can all receive the highest benefit and then maximize the profit out of that limited resource. We can't do it by simply working in opposition in each sector of the process. We can only do that by coming together.
It's something that you have to build up step by step, and really you're taking baby steps along the whole process because we all pay lip service over the years to better communication in this thing, but it's the idea of actually getting out and implementing these things and building the trust relationships with both our suppliers and with our employees. So it's a gradual step, but we're committed towards working towards that.
Yes, I think it can. I think it does take a tremendous amount of trust, but in my opinion, the issue of trust is somewhat alleviated if you have a decent contractual arrangement and the books are open all the way down through the marketing, all the way down through the processing to the producer. So if everybody knows what's on the table as a result of the final price, and everybody knows what each other's costs are, and everybody can have a look at the costs and say those are legitimate costs, then I think the trust relationship establishes itself on the basis of fact.
20 minutes before 9 o'clock at CJFW-FM, Troy McCallum on location at the Tim Hortons here in Terrace. It's Camp Day for Kids, which basically we're inviting you to come on out and fill your face with some coffee and fill your face with some donuts. All the proceeds go to Tim Hortons Camp for Kids, and kids are just dying to go to these camps. Kananaskis, I believe, is what they're heading to this year. North Country weather today, it's going to be an absolutely gorgeous day, sunshine up until midnight to get down here and do it. What is it we're doing?
Day of fun for morning personalities Doug Thompson and Troy McCallum at the Terrace Store, and for Ron Langridge in Prince Rupert. But as Terrace Store manager Brian Archibald told us, there's a serious side to all this.
Foundation. The primary purpose of the foundation is to help send needy kids to summer camp. The coffee sales throughout the chain, and there's over 700 stores in the chain. Last year there's over 700,000 raised, and we're certainly hoping to exceed that this year.
Okay, now you send 2 children for each store, is that right?
That's right, yeah. Each outlet in the country gets to send 2 children. We have the 2 outlets here in town, so we're enabled to send 4 kids to camp.
Okay, 4 local kids will be off to camp, and now where are the camps? There are 4 of them across the country.
Yeah, there's 4. There's the closest one to here is Kananaskis, Alberta. That's where all 4 kids go from Terrace.
And even if you're not a coffee drinker, you can contribute to the cause. And at least one local business decided to sweeten the pot by adding a draw prize at the Terrace operation.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Open Connection. The greatest distance in the existence of man is not from here to there, but the connection from his mind and heart. If we can conquer that distance, we can soar like an eagle and realize our immensity within. I'm Robert Pictou.